new product, new technology. You know, it's all about innovation. So we're really excited to hear what she has to say about innovation. Let's all give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Mark, for that very nice introduction. And I know I'm not very loud, so I want to just check. Can everybody hear me in the back? Okay. And if I happen to drone, get down a little, lose my volume, you guys let me know, okay? All right. So today, my promise is really to describe innovation, what it means for your business, why it's relevant in today's market, and to show you some operating models that can help you increase your innovation velocity, because we know that the market is going quickly, which means that innovation has to go quickly as well. And we want to connect innovation to the horizons of time related to your business to match with the tolerance for risk and also the potential for enterprise value. You can't hear me? It's a light, actually. So if there was a microphone, I would be happy to use it. So today I'm going to talk about the future. It's your choice whether you want to drift in the market or whether you want to take control. I'm glad to see everybody's here because that does mean that you're at least interested in taking control. And as a business owner and a leader, you deal with technology all day long. It's an obligation in your business, actually, to deal with technology. How many people use a fax machine? How many people don't want to use a fax machine? Why don't we want to use a fax machine? It's obsolete, but it's not economical to use a fax machine. Email is much faster. You know it gets to the person, well, you think you know it gets to the person who you intended to go to, and that person will answer you back in a nanosecond using email. So email is an economic, efficient way, and it's an obligation for your business to accept and adopt technology that makes you more efficient because it helps you to be more profitable, of course. So we want to look at the opportunities and what's possible, not just today, but what's coming up, what's going to be in the future. So today we're going to look at innovation not as a cost, but as an opportunity and how to drive value into the business. And the ultimate objective is for your company to be great at innovation, not just because it's a good thing to do, but because it sustains your business over time. And if you're good at innovation, you can also attract people and new employees to your company. How many people would rather go to Facebook than to come to your company? Nobody would go to Facebook? How about Google? How about any of the new tech companies out there, right? Or how about any of the really innovative startups? Yes, I mean, employees are looking for kind of what's the newest, latest, greatest thing. That you want to be the newest, latest, greatest thing. So you can attract that talent to your company. So we all know, let me go forward. We all know that if you don't innovate or die. We have heard that many times. So if you're not innovating, your competitors will put you out of business. Not that they can, they will, because it's in their economic interest to put you out of business. And we see lots of examples of this, and this is really no surprise. So the purpose of innovation really is to sustain your business. Now this is Nokia. Mark mentioned that I worked for this company for quite a while. It was before that first peak that you see there when there was another peak earlier. So innovating and not innovating causes a long decline. So the decline is really slow. Dying takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight. And a lot of times dying isn't even noticeable to the people who are inside the company. They don't know they're dying. However, most people know that they're not innovating. They know nothing new is going on and nothing exciting is happening inside the company. So what do you do about that? A lot of companies are looking to Silicon Valley as a way to find opportunity for innovation. They're looking at the startups. What are startups doing? How can I leverage startups? How can I find startups? So people generally today have two approaches. Neither one is very effective, but the first one is people look around Silicon Valley, they go tour, they go talk to VCs. We basically call that entertainment. They don't get anything out of it. They don't end up with any value. Or they say, oh, I should be like a VC. I should invest. I should spend millions of dollars. I should make big bets. I should have a big portfolio of startups that I invest in. Well, that's also great, but that's not for everybody, and it's probably not for your companies. So what do you do instead? That's what we're going to talk about. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to just produce cost, because innovation is timely. It takes a lot of time, resources, energy, people. But how do I know if I'm getting an ROI? And people say, well, it's unclear. I don't really know if I'm getting an ROI. I just think it's innovative and it's kind of a good thing and we should do that. Well, maybe it's just not measurable because it's a culture thing. I need a culture, an innovation culture in my business. Yes, culture is important, but it's not everything. Innovation sometimes is very focused internally. We've got incremental things that we do better as we go along, and that's great, but it doesn't often drive value in the marketplace unless you're creating something new, a new offer, or a new capability for the business. So we know that innovation is necessary to sustain margins, but we know that today people aren't very clear at what value are they deriving from the innovation effort that they're taking. I don't seem to have the right button or the right something here. There we go. All right, so how do you know what to do? Which direction do you look? Yes, I want to innovate. So today, people look over here and they say, oh, I'm going to ask my customer. I'm going to do market research. And I'm going to focus on a roadmap for what my business should be looking like. And that's actually insufficient. That will give you incremental value or incremental changes in your company. But really, you could look out here. So this is where I spend a lot of my time. 3 to 5 years from now, what does your market look like? What's happening in that market 3 to 5 years from now? What are the megatrends that are affecting you? What are the demographics going to look like? What are the new technologies that are coming out? What are the new competitors? What are they doing? What are your competitors doing? So looking out 3 to 5 years and getting a picture, then you know where to go. And now you know how big the gap is from where you are to where you need to be. 3 to 5 years from now is not going to be exactly correct. So I like to say directionally right, specifically wrong. You're going to have a little bit of a plan. You're going to start going in that direction, and then you're going to check and make sure in another 6 months or in another year, am I still heading in the right direction? That's better than doing nothing, and it's better than being incrementally focused. Oh, see now, there we go. So once you have the gap, the first thing to realize is that economics rule in the marketplace. And new technologies change the economics. So when you're looking at the emerging future reality, and we're looking at let's look at the new technologies, let's look at the economics that those technologies change. So we're going to look at a few of those right now. So in each technology, the economics drive adoption. So why do they drive adoption? So the network digital economy, that saved cost. The mobile economy, that was faster, so we did things faster. The sharing and social economy, we understood what everybody else was doing, and that was beneficial because then we knew what was happening in the marketplace a lot faster. Internet of Things, this is just coming on, right? So people are starting to work in Internet of Things. So that is more information that's out there. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Big data and analytics is also just starting to emerge. So people are using the information that's out there in the marketplace, not just from people, but from things to understand more what's going on and how to get better insights for their business and to drive value. So those are the disruptive events or technologies that are coming, but adoption is based on the economics. So the economic opportunity really is to create value. And the threat is really to look at how these are not simple. They're not simple to adopt. They're not simple to use. But those people who can figure out how to adopt them, how to implement them, and how to make the economics work for their business can get a competitive advantage and drive value into the business. So let's look at a few of these. So Internet of Things. So how many people are familiar with Internet of Things before I spend a lot of time? Okay, good. Great. So the reason Internet of Things is working is because the cost of components that go into the Internet of Things and connecting something to the Internet is very low. The components are just driving down to cents, right? So we're under $1 for a big component, for all the components that you need to connect your toaster to the Internet, or connect your doorbell to the Internet, or connect your refrigerator to the Internet, whatever you want. Garage door. I have my garage door connected to the Internet. I know when it's open and closed. I know how long it's been open and closed, and I know who opened and closed it. So I like that. So the value is increasing, right? So the value to me of the fact that I left my garage door open is very high because I keep a lot of things in my garage door. Yes.
Mine says I haven't used my vacation. I gotta get up there.
See, value of information is high, right? So Internet of Things produces the value based on the information that you care about. So do I care that my toaster is connected to the internet? Probably not. Do I care that my garage door is? Probably do. Now, if I'm a toaster manufacturer, do I want all my toasters that are out there in the field to be connected to the internet? You bet. So there's an economic value to the consumer, there's an economic value to the manufacturer, and all of that plays into the adoption of Internet of Things. Okay, how about mobile apps? So is Uber a taxi company? No. Uber is what? A logistics company. Not just transportation, but logistics. And they don't, as we all know, they don't own the drivers, the cars, none of the infrastructure, right? So they're only software. They play at the software level. They basically are really good at things getting from point A to point B. So who should be worried about Uber? FedEx, UPS, all of the delivery companies, any of the local delivery companies. So Uber is competing now with Google and Amazon, Safeway Delivery, etc. So Uber has a high valuation, not because they're moving people around, but because they're moving things around. Now, if we think about autonomous driving vehicles, maybe I don't even own my car, but Uber can send me a car and they can take me where I want to go. I don't have a car anymore. The economics of that are really great. No insurance, no gas, no maintenance, no car. I like it. So Uber has a very high valuation because they have great economics, and they will change the economic equation of what's happening. Come on. So keep on going on electronic and self-driving vehicles. So this is recently a fleet of self-driving trucks went across Europe by themselves, which is pretty spectacular. They did have drivers in the driver's seat just in case, but the fact was that they drove all the way across Europe. Could they drive across the United States? Sure. Could they drive from Mexico to Canada? Sure. Why not? And then if you have self-driving vehicles, who's pumping gas? Nobody, right? So why is Elon Musk such a bright guy? He's got big batteries and he's got an electric vehicle. He's investing in batteries because nobody in the electric vehicle space wants to pump gas. And so you have to have a big battery, you have to have rechargeable batteries. There's talking about self-charging the electrical vehicles in its own lane. So while you're driving, the car is charging through the lane with special infrastructure engaged. So is this going to take a long time? Yep. Is this tomorrow? No. Is it 3 to 5 years? Maybe. Should we be concerned about it? It's not going to change your life tomorrow, but if you have delivery, if you're dependent on any logistics companies, if you are a logistics company, I definitely say that this is something you should be looking at in your strategy 3 to 5 years from now. Let's talk about 3D printing. Anybody done any 3D printing? We got a few. Okay, we're going to watch a video. So if I can do this, let's see. I think I have mouse control. Come on. There we go. Construction, 3D printing, construction. They put it on a regular truck with a crane, 3D printer. They're going to print a house. They're going to print the foundation of a house. Do I need a cement truck? Yeah, I still need a cement truck to deliver cement to the printer. Do I need any people? Look at the economics. No waste material and no labor. Okay. So I am not advertising Apis Core, but it's an example, and maybe not even the, I think I lost my, let me see. It's an example of where things are going. All right, so while we're looking at where things are going, I'm going to play another one. here that's already set up. So this is about 15 minutes, and I'm going to continue to go for a little while, and then we'll see what you guys think. So this is a little mind-bending. I want to warn you in the beginning.
Every human used to have to hunt or gather to survive, but humans are smartly lazy, so we made tools to make our work easier. From sticks to plows to tractors, we've gone from everyone needing to make food to modern agriculture with almost no one needing to make food. And yet, we still have abundance. Of course, it's not just farming, it's everything. We've spent the last several thousand years building tools to reduce physical labor of all kinds. These are mechanical muscles. Stronger, more reliable, and more tireless than human muscles ever could be. And that's a good thing. Replacing human labor with mechanical muscles frees people to specialize, and that leaves everyone better off, even those still doing physical labor. This is how economies grow and standards of living rise. Some people have specialized to be programmers and engineers whose job is to build mechanical minds. Just as mechanical muscles made human labor less in demand, so are mechanical minds making human brain labor less in demand. This is an economic revolution. You may think we've been here before, but we haven't. This time is different. When you think of automation, you probably think of this: giant, custom-built, expensive, efficient, but really dumb robots blind to the world and their own work. They were a scary kind of automation, but they haven't taken over the world because they're only cost-effective in narrow situations. But they're the old kind of automation. This is the new kind. Meet Baxter. Unlike these things, which require skilled operators and technicians and millions of dollars, Baxter has vision and can learn what you want him to do by watching you do it. And he costs less than the average annual salary of a human worker. Unlike his older brothers, he isn't pre-programmed for one specific job. He can do whatever work is within the reach of his arms. Baxter is what might be thought of as a general-purpose robot, and general purpose is a big deal. Think computers. They too started out as highly custom and highly expensive, but when cheap-ish general-purpose computers appeared, they quickly became vital to everything. A general-purpose computer can just as easily calculate change, or assign seats on an airplane, or play a game, or do anything just by swapping its software. And this huge demand for computers of all kinds is what makes them both more powerful and cheaper every year. Baxter today is the computer of the 1980s. He's not the apex, but the beginning. Even if Baxter is slow, his hourly cost is pennies worth of electricity, while his meat-based competition costs minimum wage. A tenth the speed is still cost-effective when it's 100th the price. And while Baxter isn't as smart as some of the other things we will talk about, he's smart enough to take over many low-skilled jobs. And we've already seen how dumber robots than Baxter can replace jobs. In new supermarkets, what used to be 30 humans is now one human overseeing 30 cashier robots. Or take the hundreds of thousands of baristas employed worldwide. There's a barista robot coming for them. Sure, maybe your guy makes the double mocha whatever just perfect and you'd never trust anyone else, but millions of people don't care and just want a decent cup of coffee. Oh, and by the way, this robot is actually a giant network of robots that remembers who you are and how you like your coffee no matter where you are. Pretty convenient. We think of technological change as the fancy new expensive stuff, but the real change comes from last decade stuff getting cheaper and faster. That's what's happening to robots now. And because their mechanical minds are capable of decision-making, they are out-competing humans for jobs in a way no pure mechanical muscle ever could. Imagine a pair of horses in the early 1900s talking about technology. One worries all these new mechanical muscles will make horses unnecessary. The other reminds him that everything so far has made their lives easier. Remember all that farm work? Remember running from coast to coast delivering mail? Remember riding into battle? All terrible. These new city jobs are pretty cushy, and with so many humans in the cities, there will be more jobs for horses than ever. Even if this car thingy takes off, he might say, there will be new jobs for horses we can't imagine. But you, dear viewer from Beyond 2000, know what happened. There are still working horses, but nothing like before. The horse population peaked in 1915. From that point on, it was nothing but down. There isn't a rule of economics that says better technology makes more better jobs for horses. It sounds shockingly dumb to even say that out loud, but swap horses for humans and suddenly people think it sounds about right. As mechanical muscles push horses out of the economy, mechanical minds will do the same to humans. Not immediately, not everywhere, but in large enough numbers and soon enough that it's going to be a huge problem if we're not prepared, and we're not prepared. You, like the second horse, may look at the state of technology now and think it can't possibly replace your job, but technology gets better, cheaper, and faster at a rate biology can't match. Just as the car was the beginning of the end for the horse, so now does the car show us the shape of things to come. Self-driving cars aren't the future. They're here and they work. Self-driving cars have traveled hundreds of thousands of miles up and down the California coast and through cities, all without human intervention. The question is not if they'll replace cars, but how quickly. They don't need to be perfect, they just need to be better than us. Human drivers, by the way, kill 40,000 people a year with cars just in the United States. Given that self-driving cars don't blink, don't text while driving, don't get sleepy or stupid, it's easy to see them being better than humans because they already are. Now, to describe self-driving cars as cars at all is like calling the first cars mechanical horses. Cars in all their forms are so much more than horses that using the name limits your thinking about what they can even do. Let's call self-driving cars what they really are. Autos, the solution to the transport objects from point A to point B problem. Traditional cars happen to be human-sized to transport humans, but tiny autos can work in warehouses and gigantic autos can work in pit mines. Moving stuff around is who knows how many jobs, but the transportation industry in the United States employs about 3 million people. Extrapolating worldwide, that's something like 70 million jobs at a minimum. These jobs are over. The usual argument is that the unions will prevent it, but history is filled with workers who fought technology that would replace them, and the workers always lose. Economics always wins, and there are huge incentives across wildly diverse industries to adopt autos. For many transportation companies, humans are about a third their total costs. That's just the straight salaries. Humans sleeping in their long-haul trucks cost time and money, accidents cost money, carelessness costs money. If you think insurance companies will be against it, guess what? Their perfect driver is one who pays their small premiums and never gets into an accident. The autos are coming, and they're the first place where most people will really see the robots changing society. But there are many other places in the economy where the same thing is happening, just less visibly. So it goes with autos, so it goes for everything. It's easy to look at autos and Baxters and think technology has always gotten rid of low-skilled jobs we don't want people doing anyway. They'll get more skilled and do better educated jobs like they've always done. Even ignoring the problem of pushing 100 million additional people through higher education, white-collar work is no safe haven either. If your job is sitting in front of a screen and typing and clicking, like maybe you're supposed to be doing right now, the bots are coming for you too, buddy. Software bots are both intangible and way faster and cheaper than physical robots. Given that white-collar workers are, from a company's perspective, both more expensive and more numerous, the incentive to automate their work is greater than low-skilled work. And that's just what automation engineers are for. These are skilled programmers whose entire job is to replace your job with a software bot. You may think even the world's smartest automation engineer could never make a bot to do your job, and you may be right, but the cutting edge of programming isn't super smart programmers writing bots, it's super smart programmers writing bots that teach themselves how to do things the programmer could never teach them to do. How that works is well beyond the scope of this video, but the bottom line is there are limited ways to show a bot a bunch of stuff to do, show the bot a bunch of correctly done stuff, and it can figure out how to do the job to be done. Even with just a goal and no knowledge of how to do it, the bots can still learn. Take the stock market, which in many ways is no longer a human endeavor. It's mostly bots that taught themselves to trade stocks, trading stocks with other bots that taught themselves. As a result, the floor of the New York Stock Exchange isn't filled with traders doing their day jobs anymore. It's largely a TV set. So bots have learned the market and bots have learned to write. If you picked up a newspaper lately, you've probably already read a story written by a bot. There are companies that teach bots to write anything, sports stories, TPS reports, even say those quarterly reports that you write at work. Paperwork, decision-making, writing, a lot of human work falls into that category, and the demand for human mental labor in these areas is on the way down. But surely the professions are still safe from bots, yes? When you think lawyer, it's easy to think of trials, but the bulk of lawyering is actually drafting legal documents, predicting the likely outcome and impact of lawsuits, and something called discovery, which is where boxes of paperwork gets dumped on the lawyers and they need to find the pattern or the one out-of-place transaction among it all. This can be bot work. Discovery, in particular, is already not a human job at many law firms. Not because there isn't paperwork to go through, there's more of it than ever, but because clever research bots shift through millions of emails and memos and accounts in hours, not weeks, crushing human researchers in terms of not just cost and time, but most importantly, accuracy. Bots don't get sleepy reading through a million emails. But that's the simple stuff. IBM has a bot named Watson. You may have seen him on TV destroy humans at Jeopardy, but that was just a fun side project for him. Watson's day job is to be the best doctor in the world, to understand what people say in their own words and give back accurate diagnoses. He's already doing that at Sloan Kettering, giving guidance on lung cancer treatments. Just as autos don't need to be perfect, they just need to make fewer mistakes than humans, the same goes for doctor bots. Human doctors are by no means perfect. The frequency and severity of misdiagnoses are terrifying, and human doctors are severely limited in dealing with a human's complicated medical history. Understanding every drug and every drug's interaction with every other drug is beyond the scope of human knowability, especially when there are research robots whose whole job it is to test thousands of new drugs at a time. And human doctors can only improve through their own experiences. Doctor bots can learn from the experience of every doctor bot, can read the latest in medical research and keep track of everything that happens to all their patients worldwide and make correlations that would be impossible to find otherwise. Not all doctors will go away, but when the doctor bots are comparable to humans and they're only as far away as your phone, the need for general doctors will be less. So professionals, white-collar workers, and low-skill workers all have things to worry about from automation. But perhaps you are unfazed because you're a special creative snowflake. Well, guess what? You're not that special. Creativity may feel like magic, but it isn't. The brain is a complicated machine, perhaps the most complicated machine in the whole universe, but that hasn't stopped us from trying to simulate it. There is this notion that just as mechanical muscles allowed us to move into thinking jobs, that mechanical minds will allow us to move into creative work. But even if we assume the human mind is magically creative, it's not, but just for the sake of argument, artistic creativity isn't what the majority of jobs depend on. The number of writers and poets and directors and actors and artists who actually make a living doing their work is a tiny portion of the labor force. And given that these are professions dependent on popularity, they'll always be a very small portion of the population. There can't be such a thing as a poem and painting-based economy. Oh, by the way, this music in the background that you're listening to, it was written by a bot. Her name is Emily Howell, and she can write an infinite amount of new music all day for free. And people can't tell the difference between her and human composers when put to a blind test. Talking about artificial creativity gets weird fast. What does that even mean? But nonetheless, it's a developing field. People used to think that playing chess was a uniquely creative human skill that machines could never do, right up until the point they beat the best of us. And so it will go for all human talents. Right. This may have been a lot to take in, and you might want to reject it. It's easy to be cynical of the endless and idiotic predictions of futures that never are. So that's why it's important to emphasize again that this stuff isn't science fiction. The robots are here right now. There's a terrifying amount of working automation in labs and warehouses around the world. We have been through economic revolutions before, but the robot revolution is different. Horses aren't unemployed now because they got lazy as a species, they're unemployable. There's little work that a horse can do to pay for its housing and hay. And many bright, perfectly capable humans will find themselves the new horse, unemployable through no fault of their own. But if you still think new jobs will save us, here's one final point to consider. The US Census in 1776 tracked only a few kinds of jobs. Now, there are hundreds of kinds of jobs, but the new ones are not a significant part of the labor force. Here's the list of jobs ranked by the number of people who perform them. It's a sobering list with the transportation industry at the top. Continuing downward, all of this work existed in some form 100 years ago, and almost all of them are easy targets for automation. Only when we get to number 33 on the list is there finally something new. Don't think that every barista or white-collar worker need lose their job before things are a problem. The unemployment rate during the Great Depression was 25%. The list above is 45% of the workforce. Just what we talked about today, the stuff that already works, can push us over that number pretty soon. And given that even in our modern technological wonderland, new kinds of work aren't a significant portion of the economy, this is a big problem. This video isn't about how automation is bad, rather that automation is inevitable. It's a tool to produce abundance for little effort. We need to start thinking now about what to do when large sections of the population are unemployable through no fault of their own. What to do in a future where, for most jobs, humans need not apply.
Are you still awake? Is that shocking? Good light, yeah. It's interesting? Not shocking? Expected, of course, yes. Right, because economics rule in the marketplace. And so when the technology and the economics of that technology comes into play, then adoption occurs. Whether we like it, whether we feel like it's correct and moral or whatever you want to think about it, it happens because of the economics. And so it's an important point. I think it means that us as business leaders and business owners, we have to be the ones who figure out what to do, not only to adopt technology so that we can stay in business, but how do we adopt technology so that we can create an employable workforce? And how do we change the education system so that we can have people in the future who are employable and not unemployable through no fault of their own? So, interesting thing to think about. So, yep.
What they're now doing is they're incredibly focused on regional, bringing those, a lot of that work back to the U.S. So how do you see, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, technology is an economic driver, is driving costs down, but if we're driving people out of jobs, then we're losing the economic engine.
Right.
How does that play?
Yeah, so I think they're also making an economic decision, though, to have jobs come back. Because now the labor force is less expensive than it was previously if you think about what you can do, the productivity number per employee. So the economic decision is I bring people back and I pay them so that they can then come and purchase in my store. Otherwise, if they're not employed, they can't come and purchase in my store. So I think that's still an economic equation, and I think the balance is shifting of how expensive is it to work offshore versus onshore. And you'll see a lot of companies going back onshore, but it won't necessarily improve the employment rate like it was. So we're not going to see the employment rate the same, even though we've got manufacturing companies coming back, because they're going to be highly automated and a lot more technology.
You're not going to see rows of people on assembly lines.
No, never, yeah. Yes, there is, yep. Yeah, and I could make a few comments on that, but I won't, because I think we'll get off track. So disruption is also about horizons of time. So we see that today we can see a few glimpses of what's coming. It doesn't mean that's going to happen right away. So how do you think about innovation versus horizon of time? So this is a Gartner, and I don't expect you to read all the details. Has anybody seen this hype cycle, Gartner hype cycle? Okay, it comes out once a year, which everybody highly anticipates seeing this. So basically you want to look at this wave that is drawn up here, not necessarily all the dots that are there. So on the wave, basically you have technologies kind of goes up to this peak up here. Let me see if I get the wave down. This one is peak of inflated expectations. This is hype. When something's up here, it's being hyped. And then it comes down into this thing called the trough of disillusionment. That means that everything was going to be great. This is going to solve all of our problems. And then we're like, oh, wait a minute. No, it's not. It's not going to do everything we said it was going to do. But then we figure out through the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity that it actually can do some things that are valuable and does produce value for organizations out there in the business world. So what we find is that companies say, oh, I'm going to wait until the hype is over. When the hype is over, then I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it. Well, it's not very good thinking, because if the hype is over, then someone else has already figured out what it's good for. And all of the time it's going down in this trough of disillusionment and, oh, it's not secure. Oh, people don't want to use that. Oh, it's not as good as we thought it was going to be. Well, people are figuring out where can they use it, where is it economical, where does it deliver value. That's what's happening during that time period. Now, this is not that quickly, so you see 2 to 5 years are the blue button, or the blue things, right? So let's look at this one. Machine learning is blue. So machine learning is what they were talking about, computers learning by pattern recognition. So that's happening. So in 2 to 5 years, machine learning will go from hype to this plateau of productivity. That's pretty quick. So anybody looking at machine learning right now for your business? Could you be? Should you be? So that's an opportunity right there to be looking at machine learning and how do you apply that today. First of all, what the heck is it? And second of all, what does it do for me? So those are good questions for you to be thinking about right now. So we see other things up here at the top like Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, and that's what we hear about today in the news. That's all the hyped technology that's out there. It's what I've been talking about earlier today. I keep forgetting this button. So let's look at the different horizons of time. So in the very short period, so in this year, you have current business challenges that you want to solve. These are the things that are right in front of you. You can see, you probably know what they are, and you know probably how to solve them. You might be looking at startups to address the opportunity. You might be a startup. You might be trying to address that particular opportunity. And then in the 12 to 24 months, that's really a co-development opportunity. So I want to start building my network of other companies who I can build with. So whether they're other startup companies or they're other corporations, who do I connect up to so I can start building something that's bigger than where I am today? And in this case, the ROI isn't necessarily so clear right up front. So it's something that you're building over time, you're kind of heading in a certain direction, and you're discovering with the partners what's working and what doesn't. And then in more than 24 months, then we're talking about business transformation. So these are the things that are kind of a couple years off. You want to start learning about, you want to start developing, you want to start putting in place so that in a couple of years you're going to be in the right place in the market and you're going to have the right offer for the people who are interested in your product. So we see that there are companies that engage with startups all the time, and then when they do, they focus initially on what we would say is the low-hanging fruit. So what are the ones that they initially can quickly see how to pull them in and make their business better? So if you're a startup, that's the first place to go to get some traction in the market. But after that, in year 2, 3, and 4, you start moving and shifting towards a position where you're looking at longer-term co-development and transformation. So, did I? Okay. There we go. Come on. So if you're thinking about how to work with startups and you want to get into transformation, how do you know what to look for? What technology do you want to look for? What type of businesses do you want to look for? What type of capabilities do you need? And we've developed something called business-driven innovation, which basically takes you all the way from anticipating the market trend, so that's looking 2 to 5 years out, all the way to today's portfolio. So what do I need to be doing today? What actions do I need to be taking to produce the innovation that I want to have in a couple of years from now? So this is just a quick way to look at that, but I'm going to show you more of an example. So this is to provide direction and focus. You can turn that into basically use case development. So anybody use use case development today as a practice? You hear a couple people. So you figure out what is the application that I need, what's the technology that I'm interested in, and where do I find the economic value from that technology. So the use case development, this is just an example of using IoT inside of a warehouse. So we did this as a workshop it took about an hour and a half with a company. And basically you go through all of what's the topic, what are the business challenges that we have, what do the economics look like, what does the technology look like, what are our customers' concerns, and then you get to what's the potential opportunity and what's the business case for those opportunities. So in my experience, in my world, nothing happens without a business case, and everybody who's involved has to have a positive business case. So it can't take from anybody. Everybody has to win in the process. So when you're using startups and you're looking into Silicon Valley, which we're all just right here, leveraging startups is an easy way to accelerate what you're doing today. There's an accelerator model out there today where you can go and figure out who's out there, what are they doing. You can look at what the futuristic startups are looking at. And you can also get a sense for what's happening in the marketplace. Where is the innovation happening? Whether you want to connect with the startups or whether you want to bring that in, you at least can see what the competitive landscape looks like. So this is an open innovation model. It's not unique to us necessarily. We do work with companies on open innovation. So the first thing is to source. So we go and look at hundreds of companies, figuring out which ones are the right ones. We go through a selection process, and then after that, we mobilize. So we start to put together pilots. We implement the pilots with the company, because once you have a startup, what do you do with them? How do you work together, and how do you decide what to do? And then analyze. So making sure that the value that was promised is the value that was delivered. So just some, you guys, I don't know, I feel like I'm preaching to the audience on startups here, but so there's incubators, there's VC investors, and then there's accelerators. So incubators are new companies just getting started. The VCs and investors and angels are included here, and then the accelerators are really market traction. So if you're looking for companies that you want to work with, that you want sort of that are ready to go, then you go to the accelerators. If you're looking for really new, then the incubators are the place to go. And then there's selection criteria. So this is just an example. You might have different selection criteria. So we look at what's the company looking for. That's that innovation brief up at the top. And then what are the characteristics of the startup that we would like to have, or that we'd like to work with. And then what's the business opportunity? And so this is really where you get the business case and the justification of the value. This is I'm an industrial engineer, operations manager for a long time, so I have to have a flow chart in my slide deck. So this is just an example of what that flow looks like, how the companies connect up to startups, and which process they go through. So when you get a pilot, when you get a startup and you want to do a pilot, we really focus on the pilot charter. So making sure we understand what the objectives are, what the intention is, what's the purpose, what's the outcome, and what's the measurement. And how do you know if you've done it the right way? How do you know that you've achieved the outcome that you intended to achieve? So the startup pilot charter is a key component in making sure when you're starting that innovation process that you know what you're measuring and you know if you got there. So this is an example from one client that we were working with. We looked at over 450 startups just to get to 5 pilots. So it takes a lot of work to sift through all the startups that are available to us through the different means, just to get the 5 pilots started with this corporation. So there are the gems are out there. It does take some amount of time to sort through and find them. And then we produce a dashboard of results, so we know we're tracking all along and measuring all along. What are we doing? What's the activity? But also what's the output? And then over here is the business case. So we know what the status is and what the return was for each pilot that we're running. Yeah. So of the startups that we met through those sources, that's how many got into our process of selection. So if we looked at, so Plug and Play, just for example, is a very high volume channel. So we look at hundreds of companies that come through Plug and Play, but not all of them are interesting for us. And so of the 312, 36 were interesting, and so that's the conversion rate there. So it's an interesting measure because we want to know if we're going to go to, so this is only a small list, but if we go to other VC sources or other incubators or accelerators, we want to know if they're effective for us. If we're not getting anything out of them, then we would probably not source from them. What's that? Yeah, so that's this one back here, this one. So there's selection criteria. This isn't all of it, but there's other selection criteria, but it's just an example. So it's dependent on the company, and it depends on what they're looking for. So So there's a lot of metrics that you can actually track for innovation, and I wanted to just point these out. So we know a lot of people look at the financial metrics, but financial metrics are a lagging indicator. Financials have already happened. The sales have already happened. You've already gotten the ROI. You've already made the investment. So it's late. So to just measure the financials is actually not the best thing to do because it's too late to do anything different. Of course, you can impact the future financials, but you can't impact any of your current financials ever. So then let's look at the market. So do we have new products? Are we competitive? Are we competing on value or are we competing on price? How are we acting in the market? How many startups are entering our market? It's a really good indicator of disruption that we should be paying attention to. And then products. So are we anticipating new technologies? Are we advancing our product? Are we looking far enough out? And do we have ROI for all the new projects that we've got going on? And then renewal. This is really the leading indicator over here. And I mentioned talent earlier. So if you've got the people who are the most innovative in your company leaving, that's a very early indicator that you're not so innovative. Meanwhile, if you're attracting people to your company because they want to be innovative and you are innovative, that's a good early sign that you are an innovative group. Okay, so this is just some of the things that our customers have said. They don't realize how far they are behind until they start looking in the market. They start looking at startups and they say, oh my gosh, there's a company who's going to put me out of business tomorrow. So they also see that their competitors are in the market as well, which is interesting because if your competitors are innovating and you're not, that means you're in the process of dying. So you want to gain innovation velocity. You need an innovation strategy. And then I'm going to leave a few minutes for questions. This is my last slide. So an innovation strategy has 4 components. So you want to have that emerging reality. You want to know how the economics are changing in the marketplace. You want to know what your innovation horizon timeline looks like. And then you want to know what the business case and what the business reasons are for innovating in your company. So just in closing, we know that we want to create the future. We know that we need to understand what that future looks like. The future isn't defined, so it's directionally right, specifically wrong. So figure out what the direction is and we start heading that way. So I'll take a few questions. I think we have about 10 minutes. Yes. So the business case that I'm speaking about is financial. So we could be going to market. What's the cost of going to market? What's the return? How long is it going to take? What's the investment going to be? And are we going to basically be profitable by doing that? So how you go to market depends on what the innovation would be. So if it's a radical innovation, I might be going to market in a big way because I want to do something that's very substantially different. If it's a minor innovation and it's just a little bit different than what I'm already doing today, then it's maybe just a new feature of my product. So it really depends on the level of innovation that you have. No other questions? Thank you very much.
So I just did have one other thought.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to work with you,
Yes.
what do you do? How does that work? What kind of arrangement is it on an hourly basis or job basis?
Yep. So we do everything on a project basis, so it's not an hourly at all. And a project typically depends on where you are. But if you don't have a picture of where that market's going to be in about 3 to 5 years, we start there. So we start with that strategy, the emerging future reality, and we build that vision so that you know kind of what you could be doing 3 to 5 years from now. And then we work backwards towards the portfolio of things that you need to do. One of the things that we suspect that you'll need to do is that go and look in the market for startups and go and look and see what other companies are doing in their space.
Do you primarily work with startups, or are you also working with larger established companies that want to do something?
So we work generally for the mid-market and larger companies, but we also know we work with the startups and the VCs as well. So we work to make the right connections for companies, but that's not the only thing that we do. So for the smaller companies, that strategy and the planning is really important, so we do that. We may not source any startups for them. For the corporations, most of the time they know what their strategy is and they know what they need to do, and so they're more interested in let's go find the technologies, the companies that we need to work with. Yes. Not sure what you're saying. I think everything's going to be tied to economics. Yeah. I think that, so the challenge that's on the table right now is to figure out what the right things are for the labor force. And I think that we will at some time, and I don't know when, I don't know if it's 10 years or 20 years, see a position where there are, and I think we already see it a little bit in transportation, like the taxi drivers today are like, you know, oh my gosh, my world is upside down because now I've got all these independent contractors, you know, driving for Uber and Lyft and whatever. So it's that kind of like, it's not a sudden thing, and I don't think it's a catastrophic thing. I think it's little industry upset every once in a while. Yeah, and I think there will be portions of the industry. I think transportation is one of the very first ones that's going to be the most upset, and probably has the labor force. They have an aging trucker population. The average age of a trucker is over 55 now. Nobody's becoming a truck driver these days. So what do? You know, so you've got an aging group of workers and you don't have anybody coming in. So there are some places where automation will help people, help industries kind of make that transition a little bit easier. However, the people who are 55 who are truck drivers who don't have retirements, savings, and aren't in good shape financially, they could have a problem in another 10 years when they're 65 and they don't have a job. You know, if they're planning to just drive until they drop dead, maybe that's not a good strategy, but there's probably people out there who are in that position. That's true. Yep. For now, until the economics. Yep. So it's whatever the economics, you know, dictates is what will happen there. Yeah. OTTO sounds familiar. Tell us what they do. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think long haul trucks are coming. Yeah. Yeah.
100,000
So medical is one we haven't really been in. There's a lot of specialty. Yeah. Yes. And there's a lot of disruption in medical. So IoT is covers a lot of space, but IoT medical is kind of in our area. We haven't gotten into the doctor's office or any of the hospitals or anything like that. We generally work with manufacturers, just to, of whatever kind, and transportation companies, just because they're.
It's really scary to think about a 100,000-pound tractor trailer coming down the road at 7 miles an hour, nobody in it.
Like a drone.
It's driving it. Probably worse off if the driver falling asleep.
Yeah. I'm happy to have my Amazon box delivered by drone, so it's all right with me.
Okay, great. Well, let's give you one.
Thank you very much.